Alright, Chapter 3, Maintenance, Section 1, General. 42, Electrical Equipment. The maximum surface that can be obtained with electrical machinery only when it is kept dry and clean. The especially true of the copper dust, the brake shoe, the dust, or other mechanical matter that may collect about the apparatus. All apparatus should be blown out using dry compressed air with the part assembly with the wipe off the clean, the wiping rag. The wiping rags are preferable to cotton waste as they are less liable to leave limit. When using the air clean with the vicinity with the exposed mica, the insulation of the care should be taken. Not use the high pressure small flakes of mica will be blown off, finally resulting with the complete destruction of the insulation. Oil is very destructive to the insulating material as collected dust and dirt, causing the breakdown of the electrically. When lubricating apparatus, extreme with the care should be taken to prevent lubrication for the getting of the insulated with the parts. If it does not get on these parts, it should be thoroughly wiped off with a clean rag. See all the screws and bolts which the securely electrical connection should be kept in tight with the inside with good contact, making the ground connection, the surface of which for the connection to be made should be cleaned thoroughly with all the dirt and paint, the rust, and the issue of the good electrical content. Cement may be used to advantage of repairing burned insulation such as chutes, air siding, the contactors, and switches. Using varnished electrical insulation conform with the military specification MIL V1137A for all cables exposed to the dirt moisture, especially with where the creepage is important with the highly insulating qualities given the smooth surface which is easily cleaned. 43. Control equipment. During the inspection of the control equipment, check for the following: loose nuts or screws, cotter pins missing if they're not split, broken wear springs, and weak contact pressure, interlock and relay contact, improper weight for the brake grease or dirt insulation materials, worn, burned contactors, loose and terminal connections, broken insulators. When painting the control equipment, the varnish for the electrical insulation conform with the military specifications MIL V1137A. The running of the gear and mechanically inspection for the trucks, other parts of the running gear and the equipment, the frequency, surface condition may require for loose missing bolts of the nuts, worn with wearing plates, with worn with the broken bearings, defective gears and gear cases, broken springs, etc. The inspection should include the following parts: gear and gear cases, motor axle caps supporting the bolts and nuts and linings, motor armature bearings, motor nose, suspension bolts and springs and safety lugs and hangers, journal boxes wearing the plates and bearings, pedestal wearing plates, the equalizer springs and dust guards, I thrust plates and end axles, wheels, hub liners, center plates and side bearings, brake rigging, including cylinder level hangers, pins, brake shoes, brake shoe heads, and turnbuckles. Alright, sand hose pipes, couplers, and motor leading support clamps and air brake hoses. 45, the engine generator mounting. The most common design for the use of the connection for the engine for the generated bolt, the generated motor engine with the connection for the flexible coupling with the rabbit fits with give the correct alignment with the coupling and the properly equalized air gap. The set with the support of the point of suspension, one of each of the side of the generator, one of the fan hand with the engine with the common sub base. The pads are usually used when the generator supports the fan end for being usually bolted with the support of the sub base. The sub base is fastened to the locomotive platform by the bolts. Longitudinal movement of the set is restricted to the total of the 16,000 of an inch of the 0 or 8,000 of an inch on each side of the blocks. While the generated support of the clearance should be checked occasionally during the service of that it does not become excessive. The engine generator with the sub base mounted with the locomotive deck plate on strips of the cork laid on the deck plate under the sub base. The base is held in place by bolts. Water cooling system. After operating the circulation system is used for the cooling of each such engine, central fuel pump that circulates the water of the engine, cooling water jacketed in through the radiator back to the pump. The filling of the drain water system. Before filling the system, but for sure the drain plugs are tight. They use only the clean water filled through the pipes located on the top of the radiator or through the pipes located along the side of the locomotive below the deck plate. The water supply should be replenished required to make sure that the loss of leakage, evaporation, drain the water system will completely open the shutoff valve to remove the drain plugs whenever they occur. The water pumping may certain that all the parts of the system, including the engine block and the water cooler auxiliaries, are drained. Replacement water. The water in the system should be drained completely every month and to make the water added until the timeline concentration of the impurities water becomes greater. To keep the concentration from getting stronger, the water should become completely changed. Wheel diameters. Keep the wheel diameter variation with the height of the eighth of an inch between the two pairs of the wheels of the board with too much of the substance imbalance located between the motors. However, the recommended with wheel diameters maintain necessary nearly equal to the railroad shoe and practice hermits. Our Section 2 lubrication diesel engine refer to technical manual 55-1001 and lubrication oil number 55-1001 refer to figure 49. Generator figure 49 generator lubrication order 55-1263 figure 50 50 motor refer to lubrication order 55-1263 figure 50-51 air compressor keep of the oil crankcase the level shown with the band gauge for the located with the one corner of the crankcase refer to lubrication order 55-20 55-2063, figure 50. Control. Refer to the lubrication order 55-1263, 50 engine brake, 53 engine brake valve. The last lubrication for the engine valve with a good grade with graphite grease should be applied with varying sparingly with the valve to take them apart for cleaning. If necessary, the oil may be applied with the oil hole, which is the high plug in it. However, this should be done only with a covenant with the taking the valve apart. The oil must be applied with the very sparingly. 54 brakes cylinder, refer to Technical Manual 55-2021, main journals. I'm looking over the waste in the connection with the main journal location of the back of the journal box. The fire frequently surface condition may require the use of good grade wool waste soaked oil and preferred with lubrication order 55-1263 for at least 24 hours, draining with for about 6 hours. Determine template with the temperature with the oil of the room in which the waste is drained should be about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Roll drain waste. The figure of 2 should be packed tightly halfway around with the journal and the back end of the plate. Back end of the bottom of the box and packing B figure 2 should be placed in the position with a moderate pressure against the journal, but sufficient to maintain good contact applying the water. Waste somewhat looser than the side of the box to prevent wiping effect. Alright, this shows the figure 2, the method of packing journal. You have your dust guard journals. A is the drain waste, B is the packing, and C is the semi-dried waste. The packing should not extend higher than the center of the journal. After the packing is complete with the free oil with the poured over the waste along the side of the board box near the center of the waste, semi-dry waste. C in figure 2 should be placed between the end of the journal in front of the box, shown the purpose of which the surface of the dirt collector, which can easily be renewed as required. Refer to lubrication number 55-1263 for lubrication instruction. 56. Traction motor, single reduction gear. When the locomotive is in first place, the surface is add about 1 pound of the grease weekly in each for the gear case of the make frequent inspection through the filling openings to preserve that either if there is good filling of lubrication on the teeth, the required for the amount of the frequently adding of the grease can be determined. Avoiding the use of lubrication, the necessary condition with width to probably exist with a considerable leakage in the grease. At the same time, the greater gear teeth should be in the good film lubricant. Refer to the lubrication order 55-1263, figure 50 lubrication instruction. That's 1 pound of grease for the week in the gear case of your single reduction gear, traction motor gears. Double reduction gear. Locomotive is equipped with a double reduction gear. All gears and bearings except for the bearing on the communicator end of the motor lubricated from oil in the grease gear case. The figure lubrication order 55-1263, figure 50 lubrication instructions. 57. Center plate. Lubricated center plate at least once a month and often necessary to refer to lubrication order 55-1263, figure 50 of the lubrication instructions. Section 3, high potential test. General, whenever the diesel electric locomotive operated with the Interstate Commerce Commission regulation for the most complied with the requirements of the paragraph of the 253 of the laws and the rules and instruction inspection testing a locomotive other than the steam government period with the high potential test for the electrical circuits winding with the carrying of the current with the potential over the 150 volts for the test for the not required for the locomotive and proper purely industrial service is mandatory for the performance of the Department of the Army of the diesel locomotive on the annual basis for the after the generator overall extension repair for the electrical apparatus. 59. The preparing for the test. Prepare for the locomotive for the test. Proceed as follows. Refer to figure 48 with the cleaning electrical circuits winding for the test and blowing out the dry compressed air. Lay B. Lift off all the generator brushes so that they will clear the communicators to disconnect the following. Cables by reverse and GA connection on the generators. The cable between the reverse and ammeter shuts. Connection with the GA and GS of both generators. The ground wires for the field shutting control relays V1 and V2 Block main contactors P1, P2, P3, and P1 PIE closed. The set of the reverse to either the forward with the reverse direction. Set the engine starting connector to GS1, GS21, generator field contactor GFI1 are open. Also, the throttle idle in position. Disconnect the generator ground cable GAKK in order to avoid excessive high potential surges. Allow the connection of the high potential test wires and circuits before energizing testing of the wires. To avoid the possibility of personal injury, always stand outside of and at least 10 feet out from the locomotive while the test is being applied. 60. Application and testing voltage. Normal operating voltage traction motor generator is considered with 225 volts with a 75% approximate generator voltage per maximum permissible speed of the locomotive. B. The normal operating voltage of the battery and low voltage control circuit is considered with 37.5 volts. This is 2.34 hundredths of the volt cell of the battery, which is approximately normal charge circuit current. To apply high potential test for each of the main circuit of the motor windings, connect one of the high potential cables. to the conveniently point of the on the circuit to be tested on the out of the other than the frame of the locomotive. Apply the test voltage and if specified the Interstate Commerce Commission requirements. Test the generator armature. Place the one high potential lead with the generator communicator with other locomotive with the frames. Apply with the test voltage specified with the Interstate Commerce Commission. The generator communicating field winding starting with the field winding as well as the low voltage generator leads also operate with less than 150 volts as therefore not included with the high potential circuit. And F, although the Interstate Commerce Commission requires the application only of 50% above normal voltage and the winding is permissible for the equipment to apply with a high potential test value of 75% of the normal working voltage except for the windings connected with the low side of the generator armature. G, after the test is completed, remove all the testing connections, restore all the wire connections, and remove the blockhead from the contactor. Section 4. Power plant and locomotive throttle control testing and adjustment. 61. Description of the power plant. The locomotive contains the two power plants, and each of the consisting diesel engine direct connected with the traction motor generator. The engine generates a set furnace power to driven the traction motor, the motor in which is geared with the wheels. 62. The power plant operation. The maximum utilization of the locomotive power of the plant is obtained with a wide range of operating conditions properly coordinated with the diesel engine power output and the traction generator excitation that depends on the power adjustment of the diesel engine fuel supply and the external field resistor of the traction generator. When the locomotive is operated with the full throttle, the power output for each of the power plants is according with the generator characteristic curve of the figure 3 with the setting of the fuel stop for the crew of diesel engine fuel pump power with the partial throttle position of power plant output. Therefore, the locomotive, the performance is determined by the locomotive throttle control in which provides the various degree of the generated excitation together with the properly fitting fuel setting of any position throttle handle with the same type of the established necessary electrical circuit for the application of the power of the traction motor and the motors. All partial throttle position is important within the limits of individual power of the plants divided in total load equally. Is in preparation while making a test. The following points should be kept in mind at all times in order to safeguard the equipment and personnel. 1. Carefully observe all the instructions pertaining to the operation of locomotive power plants. 2. Make all the test wiring connections tightly. Ensure they are well insulated. Any wires temporarily disconnected while making the test should be isolated, but they cannot become grounded in contact rotating equipment and control devices and terminals. 63. Hydraulic throttle. Hydraulic throttle. A clean hydraulic system will work better than last longer and to take every precaution to prevent the dirt and abrasive entering the system. Never to handle any of the internal part of the hydraulic system with the dirty, greasy hands. Even a trace of oil or grease will contaminate the brake fluid and cause the rubber parts to deteriorate and swell. If the welding is done near either cylinder, the cylinder must be protected with the removal of the rubber parts, but will not be standing at temperature above 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Never operate the system with the fluid reserve less than half full. Always use the best grade with the hydraulic brake fluid. Interior fluids will clog the lines, damage the rubber parts. Be sure that the clamping bolts holding the operating arms and serrated shafts of both the masters and slave cylinders are tight. Any slippage of here will strip the serrations and ruin the arm or the shaft. At all times making the adjustments to the Alright, this shows the characteristic curve of a generator TM55 the roller valve with the cleaner of the idling cam of the throttle of the handle is returned to the idle position to enter the hydraulic shaft. How the hydraulic system must be tight and free of leaks before attempting to make adjustment. When making adjustment, even the temporary nature, but to be sure that the lock washers are placed and all the lock nuts are drawn tightly. Air in the hydraulic system. The presence of the air in the hydraulic system will result in the generally unsatisfactory operation that may be detected holding the external throttle linkage of the slave cylinder firmly handling while the throttle handle is brought up to the full throttle position. The slave cylinder movement is not firm and positive, especially with the latter part of its stroke near the full throttle of the system contains the air leaks in some point. Spongier and non-positive movement in the airly part of the stroke is not serious and may be ignored to eliminate the air. Follow the procedure outlined in paragraph 66. Alright, 55. Leak in hydraulic system. To locate the leaks, wipe all the joints of the piping between the master and slave cylinders clean and dry that they operate with the throttle handle and service several times to carefully inspect each for the point of the brake fluid and prepare for any leaks before proceeding. Leaking at the pipe of the threads will be corrected to assembly of the joint and cleaning the threads. Applying the mixture of 7-part of litharge with 3 parts of glycerine by volume, the full length of the throttle. Full length of the threads, being very careful not to allow the mixture to enter the hydraulic system, reassembling the joint, allowing the drive for at least 1 hour before applying pressure, mixing all the only a small amount of sufficient immediate needs, but the sense that cement will dry out and become useless. Keep the leatherage tightly covered when not in use. The joint made with the current cement may be loosened or only by heating. See, internal leaks of the system may occur with the rubber, the piston cup with either the master or the slave cylinder at the needle valve of the master cylinder's piston. This needle with the valve provided with the compensate the loose for the expansion of the fluid of the hydraulic system is only when the throttle system is in idle position. Any jerk of the needle with the valve with the silk will prevent the following with the closing of the throttle of the advance through the allowing the field to flow through the piston instead of moving the slave cylinder piston to correct the disassembly of the master cylinder. Clean all the parts thoroughly. Caution, use only alcohol, isopropanol, or clean brake fluid in cleaning. Never use kerosene, gasoline, on petroleum derivatives. Take precaution to keep all the parts clean while the reassemble the parts exactly the same order relative to the position as they have found originally. Wash in brake fluid just before reassembly to provide an initial lubrication. Leak of the piston cups may be corrected only by the replacing the cups. You should not only give it the trouble unless they have been in contact with the oil, the grease, or gasoline, or kerosene. Therefore, should not be replaced until the other provided possibilities are exhausted. 66. Ventilation and hydraulic system. The system contains air result of the loss of the brake fluid due to the evaporation leak. The neglect to keep the reservoir filled must be vented with the provided equipment to proceed with the outline below. A. The equipment necessary. Reworked filler cap to bank the brake fluid reserve having a hose connection within two of the small vent hole plugs. To clean the cans of 1 gallon capacity, one can must have a hose connection at the bottom. A bleed hoser with a fitting suitable with attachment in the slave cylinder vent plug. A. 7-foot length of the rubber hose and 1 gallon of ground grade hydraulic brake fluid. B. The procedure: fill the reservoir with the brake fluid. Install the rework filler cap. Also remove the breather and the slave cylinder crank of the cause of the add of the brake until the crankcase is about 2/3 full. And a rubber tubing to join with the rework of the filler of the 1 gallon of the cap of the hose connection at the bottom. Fill the cap and with the brake fluid and set in the other operation cab roof. The elevated some of the position approximately equal to the cab roof height. Remove the dust caps through in the slave cylinder and install the bleeder hose. With the other inserted in the second with a 1 gallon can, open the vented valve with again two turns to apply the approximate 1/2 of the gallon brake fluid to the flow of the system. Stroke the master cylinder operating with the intervals during the time of always returning into the off end of the travel. The close of the vent plug with repeat with the same operation on the other end of the locomotive. After venting both ends, remove the test equipment, restore the original reservoir, fill cap and slave cylinder, dust cap screws. 67. Idling adjustment. It is important the engines idle at speed, but they are high enough to allow the auxiliary generator to charge with the batteries in both operation throttle system. It is also necessary both the master and slave cylinders are extremely retracted or off the end of the travel. In this position, both cylinders should be firmly against the internal stop. Be sure that the master cylinder operating arms are clear with the idle cam at least 1/32 of the inch when the 30,000th for the idle notch for the master cylinder is back and against the internal stop. Figure 4. Start with the ball side of figure 5. The set approximately center for the slot adjustment. The adjusting the length of the throttle rod at G to obtain the following idling speed: the 65-ton locomotive. The locomotive idling speed, RPM, the compressor and unloaded and compressor load set to and minimum. 65-ton set compressor load, idling speed, RPM, compressor unloaded set to 590 plus or minus 10, and compressor load minimum of 550. The idling speed should be within above the limits of the minimum with the compressor loaded with the pumping and to the full main reserve of the maximum with the compressor unloaded. 68. The generator characteristics. Generator characteristics are checked with adjusted in order to maintain good locomotive performance at the throttle operation. Test should be made to increase the locomotive output and observe the following procedure. Install the test meters and equipment in accordance with Figure 7. Provide the tachometer to read the engine speed. The tachometer shaft rising vertically to distribute the assembly with the diesel engine fuel pump conveniently to place the apply of the tachometer is exposed with removing the dust cap of the shaft that rotates on 1/2 of the engine speed. Take up the full load curve of each of the generator using the water box to load for each of the curve of the recorder of the generator with the voltage, load current speed, the sufficient field with the voltage current that indicated the field resistance during the test. Before proceeding, see that the fuel control up of the diesel engine fuel pump is tight against the fuel stop of the throttle hand. The throttle position is not advanced for the full throttle of the cam. Figure 4, recheck until the type B of the insert the test resistor is shown with Figure 7 and the separately excited with the field circuits is provided with the equivalent resistance of the encountered to servos with a warm generator Adjust the resistors to obtain the following values. Self-excited field ohms 5.9, separated excited field ohms 6.3. If no resistors available to operate the power plant full throttle with approximately 375 amperes loaded until the above field resistors obtained in figure 48. Keep the compressor unloaded during the generator test and see that the external field resistors are 11 and 12 or 11, 21, 11, 22. They're approximately 25 ohms. After setting the external field resistors, taking the full load of the curve between being 1200 amperes, decreasing to 0 amperes, approximately 200 amperes steps. Compare this with the generator characteristic figure 3. The caution: do not hold the currents above the 1000 amperes for more than 3 minutes at a time, taking all the reading for decreasing the load. G. The generator characteristics may be verified over by a considerable range, adjusting the external field resistors 11, 11, 11, 12, and R221, 11, 22, and R15, 11, 11, 16, 11, 25, and 11, 26. The resistor of the R15, 11, 11, 16, and R25, 11, 26 affect the high current, low voltage position and portion of the characteristic curve. Most of the schedule should be adjusted first, after which the low current of the high voltage section of the curve is regulated with adjusting the regulators 11, 11, 11, 12, and 11, 21, 11, 22. In general, decreasing the resistor of the resistors will cause the voltage to rise with the speed of the fall until the limit is reached. After with further decrease in resistance, will result in both low voltage, lower speed resistance increase, but just the opposite will occur eventually, with the curve being assume the incorrect shape. Alright, figure 4 is the master cylinder and cam arrangement used in the hydraulic throttle. D is advancing screw, E is a adjusting screw, and F is a clamping screw. You have your idling cam, operating shaft, the full throttle cam, the hinge of the neutral point of the cam, the roller followers, the master cylinder operating arm, your master cylinder operating arm, and return spring. The shape of the voltage characteristic dependent on the installing of the engine speed. For the best operation, engine speed should not be less than 1500 RPMs at any point. Adjust the external field resistor until the best possible characteristics obtained. The low of the satisfactory, usually 10% low of the voltage between 600 and 300 amperes. Low was to accept the low limit. Inspect the engine carefully. Lower the power and may also be due with a normal fuel pump, which can be compensated for backing out of the full fuel stop the screw slightly. If the screw is backed out too far, the engine exhaust will become acceptably smoking, a condition that should be avoided. If any of the corrections are to be made, but the engine recheck of the characteristics, readjust the external field resistors, repeat until a suitable curve is obtained. Okay, if the adjustment fuel stop screw is no figure. The slave cylinder and throttle rod arrangements in the hydraulic throttle control. Your throttle rod and the engine fuel pump, the arm, the collar, the engine shutdown fuel wire, the spring barrel, the custom cap screw, the vent plug, the hose, the slave cylinder, and the throttle rod returning the spring with a slotted adjustment, and throttle rod and returning spring tension adjustment. Figure 6 is the hydraulic throttle fluid piping program, the center to flange and longer effect of the fuel pump of the engine both should be reconditioned. The fuel flow with the stop of the screw set and seal with the pattern fixture given with the power plant output should not be broken with the screw adjustment until the other possibilities are exhausted. But it's necessary to make adjustment of the screw. It's recommended with the resealable after adjusting, preventing the indiscrimination movement. In any case, they should be adjusted with any of the time at the water box. The test is to be made to check the generator characteristics. 69 power plant test and partial throttle for the Cummins HBIS 600 engine with the fuel pump serial number 24684 and above. The throttle control adjustment of the partial throttle with the position made primarily to equalize the load distribution between the two power plants. The loaded unbalance may be detected comparably with the load indicated with the ammeter readings for the power plant simultaneously at the steady load. If the loads indicated the ammeters are not provided with the connecting the meter with each of the generated circuit for the purpose of checking load distribution. When the color band of the load indicators are used, the variation between the meters should not be more than the width of the yellow band and generate graduated scale and ammeters used with the reading that should agree with the 50 amperes of the meters reading signal. A motoring current of 100 amperes for the meters read the current of the two motors in parallel. Being unloaded, unbalanced, and countered with the throttle handle between with the counter pickup with the first running of the position, which only with one half of the 1/2 inch of the throttle handle will travel also along with the quadrant. This will cause any of the damage should be ignored, so there will be no appreciable load that can be pulled with the locomotive when the throttle handle is in this range. Since the engine and the two-speed governor do not attempt to make the check of the adjustment with the partial throttle position being based on no load speed and valve voltage, the engine speed, the generator voltage dependent on the load of the engine, the governor exercises no control of the partial throttle points except with preventing the engine from the overspeeding when the load is removed. And if the unbalance exceeds the permissible limit of the adjusting throttle control system will only correct the condition, will also coordinate with the diesel engine power output, the generated excitation to give the proper locomotive acceleration. Observe the following procedure. Check the operation of the throttle control switch to the TC or of the following table adjusting the necessary of the dimension indicated with the distance of the engine's respective position measured along. Alright, this shows the illustration of the equipment of the water box test, the shunt 100 burn water box test, the water being insulated from the ground, the motor field shunt connections not shown, water box, the test, the GSI, the ground, the two grounds, generator 1, 2, and motors 1 and 2, excitation fields, parallels, water box tests. Alright, the inside edge of the quadrant of the ideal position throttle handle with the motor line contactor closed, P1, P2, P3, P4, 1 and 5/16. First running position, all fingers of the throttle control switch and closed in 1 3/4 inch plus or minus 1/2 inch. First step, excitation resistance added R14, R16, R24, R26, 4.5 plus or minus 1/2 inch. Second and separate existence resistance added R15, R16, R25, R11, 26, 5/38, 5 and 38, 5 and 3/8 plus or minus 1/4 inch. Install the test shunt, multiple volt, each of the maintain the generator motor and read and generator output. The test meter if not available. The panel loader and indicator shunt with a suitable motor voltage, multi-voltmeter. The vanning of the load indicator with themselves may be used for the rough check of the generator current. Note that each load indicated the read current, if only one motor should be the 1/2 the generator output. The load indicated the scale to change from the color of the green to yellow with the 325 amps to the yellow read the 375 amperes. Connecting from 0 to 300 to 750 volt meter using the 0 to 300 volt scale between the R11 and the ground shown with the figure 7 will read the generator voltage. Do not operate the locomotive fuel throttle with the meter connected with the sense the generator field may be higher than 300, resulting in impossible damage of the meter provided with the tachometer. Read the engine with the tachometer connection the rising vertically with the distributor assembly on the diesel engine fuel pump. The conventionally placed all ply with the tachometer exposed in the removing the dust cap of the shaft rotates 1/2 of the engine speed. 3. When the engine shuts down, the place with the throttle at the point of the first step of the separate excitation resistance has been added 1 inch plus or minus 1/4 of an inch up to the quadrant. The rotate the operating cam means for the adjusting screw until the roller follower fails on the hinge at the neutral point between the two halves of the cam shown in figure 5. Make sure that the engine is operating condition that starting on one of the check fairs to the setting of the brakes so that the locomotive cannot move, bringing the throttle handle up to the first running position. All the throttle switches and fingers must be closed with the checking generator load with the speed. To caution, do not hold this load more than 1/2 of the minute at the time. It'll allow the locomotive between the few feet between each of the throttle. Generator load with the point should the 600 amps, 18 plus 3 volts, and the 510 plus 25 RPMs. And speed, if the engine speed is high as the first running position, reduce the idle speed to 5 to 10 RPMs. Recheck the load of high, increasing the resistance generator field resistance R13, 11, 14, R23, and 24. The speed voltage is following the reverse procedure. First running with the position load meter be either checked for the loading of the generator installed. The traction motor is described above and loading on its water box, in which case the connection may be made, shown in figure 7. The adjustment will have the effect of the lower throttle handle position upon the point at which the first step of the separation excitation is added. 7. Partial throttle adjustments at the point where the first step of the separated with the excitation resistance is added, but the higher that should be removed or should be made with the locomotive connected with the water box and load setting of the corresponding with the current voltage would be obtained with the generator with loaded with the stalled motor. However, the load somewhat is high and to be held with the stationary motor for the long enough time to be enabled to obtain the satisfactory reading. In addition, with the brakes could not be held with the locomotive at a standstill. If the traction generator is connected with the water box, make adjustment described below. Bring the throttle handle up to the point where the first step of the separate excitation resistance has been added. The check of the generator load and speed. These should be 880 amperes to 27 plus or minus 5 volts to 800 plus or minus of RPMs. 50 RPMs. If the speed of load of low increase the engine's fuel, advancing the master cylinder joint operating on increase the resistance generated field resistor R14, R15. Moving the sliding band of the R15 only will also help the correct of this condition that permits the engine speed to reach. Turn will increase the generated voltage for the given end of the current with the 880 amperes of speed load and high, following the reverse procedure. Alright, do not attempt to make the adjustment while holding the load. Return to the throttle handle with the idle position. Make the change will be required to check the load after obtaining the satisfactory single return with the throttle position. Advance the idle cam with the 1/32 of the inch touching the roller follower to make adjustment to advance the screw D of the roller. Figure 4, the roller follower must be clear with the cam with the throttle handle in the idle position. When the engine running with the load, without load, place the throttle handle with the full throttle position. See that the fuel control level of the diesel engine pump that comes up with the fuel stop. The spring and the spring barrel should be compressed 1/16 of an inch or to 1/8 of an inch under the conditions. If not advanced with the retrack of the required with the full throttle section for the operating cams, making the adjusting screw with the E figure 4 until the desired result is obtained. An adjustment of the equalized load distribution made without benefits of the water box above that procedure should be observed except the desirable operate. Both power plants together with the comparison between the two, since the accurate load and the spade adjustments are not practical. After completing adjustment for each of the end of the locomotive, to check the entire throttle to be sure that the locomotive devices are tightened and that all locking washers are placed in particularly clamping screw figure F, figure 4. F. Place the throttle handle in the full throttle position. See that the fuel control level on the diesel engine fuel pump is against the fuel stop screw. Then locate the collar of the throttle rod to clear the engine shutdown and operating with the arm approximately 1/16 of an inch. Figure 5. Do this in operating an arm with the extreme of the forward position toward the fan of the end of the engine. Then tighten the screw clamping the engine shutdown. Pull the wire when the arm start the engine. See that the wire will shut down the idling speed with the engine shutdown knob and the operating in this cab is pulled. Section 5, traction generator.